Hello everyone and welcome to CareersTalk. I'm Sunil Sharma, an agile consultant based in Netherlands, and today we are going to discuss Scrum Master questions asked in Wells Fargo, Citibank, and PNC Bank, shared by our group members. And to help us, we have invited Kushal and Obina from USA. So this is a part 2 of our series featuring Kushal and Obina. The link to the part 1 can be found in the description, which you can watch later. But friends, before we start, make sure to subscribe for more such informative session. And if you find the content valuable, don't forget to hit that like button. So without further ado, let's dive in. Thank you, Kushal and Obina, for giving your time today. Over to you guys. Kushal,
Yeah,
Obina.
thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, we can help answer the
Thanks,
questions.
Sanand. It's been an honor to be invited again and to share our experience on this leading agile platform. And as I always say, you have been doing a you know thankless job to all those agile aspirants. And it is this channel is growing, and I whenever I see any updates on this channel, new Scrum Masters are coming up and they share their experience. I do feel okay. That's our family, and it is growing and it is evolving with the period of time.
Okay, I'm just
Thanks.
tears on my eyes, so thank you, Kushal, for that. Okay, guys, let's start the session. Okay,
No problem.
so the very first one is a product owner and the developers have a conflicting view on prioritizing a critical bug fix, versus a new feature. So they are like struggling and they are having some kind of conflict. So how would you facilitate a kind of resolution that aligned with the project goal? So yeah, who want to take Obina? Maybe you can take this.
Yeah, let me take this one. Yeah. So I'd say this kind of conflict is a little bit different from the regular conflict where there's a disagreement from maybe a development perspective. But when it comes to prioritization, I think the first step would be getting the both of them on board. So unlike where there are disagreements with respect to probably fights or serious conflicts, then we go with a one-on-one. So we're having a prioritization. Um, that's the scenario. So the first step is I want to clarify the issue, and clarifying the issue is trying to see what exactly we're trying to prioritize and how we're going to prioritize. So I like to carry out something called cost benefit analysis. So cost benefit analysis is just simply we look at the time it's going to take the developers for both the bug and the feature. We look at the business value, we look at the resource, and finally the return on investment. Now, comparing both of them with these factors, we can arrive to our answer. Now, if we don't arrive at a consensus on which of them we should give high priority, then we go to risk analysis. Now, the risk analysis also would come from the risk is going to take for us to delay one or the other. So the bug in question, what risk does it pose? Is it going to affect our maybe payment channel? That's our resource, our revenue. The future, is it going to affect retention, which is also going to result in reduced revenue? So we look at the impact and we compare. The one with a higher impact to the business, we're going to give it a higher priority. Now, if that doesn't work, we now move to the next phase, which is facilitating an open communication, where both of them will add their view as to the pros of going with the bug, which the developer stated, and as the pros of going with the features. And at the end, we can come to a consensus. Finally, I think this is going to be the final step. If we don't get to a consensus, then we go back to the origin, which is what is the goal of this project? How does the future or the bug tie to the goal of the project? And based on that, we were able to narrow down which of them is a must have, or which of them is a should have, or could have, or a won't have. So, based on these four factors, we will be able to come to a consensus of which presides over the other, the bug or the feature. Thank you, Sinan.
Thank you, Obina, for that elaborated answer. Yeah, thank you. Okay, let's move on. So the next question is, let's say in your recent project, your team's sprint velocity matrices indicate that there is a steady increase, but the defect density in the delivered code has also increased, So how would you address this issue with the team to balance the speed and the quality? Yeah, Kushal, you want to take?
Yeah. So no, this is a very common. These both the metrics, let it be velocity or defect density, they are very much required whenever we are just assessing pods and everything. So this is something which, not exactly this situation, but I had been through similar situation long back. So it is a kind of thing where defect density was increasing, and like my velocity, that was also steady. So it means that we were not delivering that quality code, and that was raised during the agile maturity assessment we had been part of. So this is something, this came in our quarterly maturity assessment, where we saw that the defect density, number of defects injected in the production, or in the unit, we got that was increasing, and our velocity, that was also going at the right pace. So what I this pattern was going on for last 2 sprints and all. So what I did at that point of time, it's like there might be possibility that we are compromising more of a technical debt, and we are working, fixing the code and just shipping it straight away. So I thought of checking it with the solution architect and dev leads, what exactly is the reason why we are not doing we are, the quality and the standards we are not able to maintain, and that's why we are getting so much defects. So we did a kind of root cause analysis for that, and where we identified which section particularly we are getting more of bugs. There are multiple components in a project, so which component we are facing more of bugs? Does it need to be refactored, or what exactly? So we came to the conclusion that there are few areas that needs to be refactored, and these areas we are getting mostly and majority of the bugs. Then after that, what I did, from a process perspective, I set up some code reviews within the daily stand up. We used to discuss them. So during code reviews, what I did, I created a subtask for each of the stories whichever a developer is working on, and those subtasks were relevant to the code reviews. If at all that subtask can't be closed, that story can't be closed without that subtask. So for the subtask, the person will be reviewing the code for that person, for the developer, and then we will be closing that. So it's a kind of layer that I added before pushing the code to the prod. So it in a way, we saw that the number of defects were less in the subsequent sprints and in the subsequent releases. And then we promoted more of an automation, where we can automate the stories beforehand, so that the quality of code we are delivering, it gets increased. And then we stressed upon the factor that we should do a robust unit testing. So whenever developer was working on it, so we advise them that do a unit that unit testing should be done in a more efficient way, new test scenarios. Okay, so these things we imposed, and eventually our defect density got dropped. But at the same time, this happens because of other reasons as well. When we have the pressure of delivering so and so numbers, so at that point of time, it's like they push it everything to complete it. So I set out some realistic expectation in terms of the velocity. So that is something, it's not like that we will be delivering whatever the constant velocity is there. So we will be delivering that velocity every time. So there might be possibility that we have to compromise on the quality. So instead of that, I spoke with my stakeholders and everyone that we should not compromise on the quality. It's better we will deliver less story points, but we will deliver in a way that the defects are not being injected into production.
Thank
That's
you.
my answer.
Yeah, thank you, Kushal, for that elaborated one. Okay, let's move on. So next one is, let's say in a retrospective, the team identifies a recurring issue uh, with a communication breakdown, which happened across the teams. So how would you facilitate an action plan to address and improve the communication across multiple teams, across multiple cross-functional teams? Yeah, Obina, you want to take?
Oh, yes. So before we can go ahead and facilitate an action plan, I think we need to know what the cause is. So I would advise that a root cause analysis as to why we have that communication breakdown is being carried out. So you can use any of the root cause analysis strategy. I prefer using the 5 whys as to knowing exactly, drilling down to understand why exactly we have that communication breakdown. Now, after you ask, you get feedbacks from the team members. They're going to be suggesting a lot. Some will tell you it might have to do with the tools and it might have to do with the processes. So these two are like common reasons if you carry out root cause analysis for communication breakdown. It's usually tools and processes. And for you to tackle it, then you have to work on the types of tools that is gonna that would be fostering good communication among your team members. Now, tools like Slack, Teams, WhatsApp, depending on how robust your company is. Now, within those tools, you can have communication channels, break down communication channels into teams. You can categorize your communication types, like outages can go through emails, processes, stages of your processes can go through teams, and you have that be a categorization of your communication channels worked on. Now you go over to the processes. Now the processes, like we have already in the Agile framework or Scrum framework, are the various ceremonies. Now, some people might see those ceremonies as not very important, but you can tie some of those communications to the ceremonies that you have. The stand up, we know, helps with blockers based on the questions that we ask. The retrospective for continuous improvement, review for us to see how well we've done on the whole sprint. So it's pretty much all of those. Now you have to have based on the processes, a good communication platform, which I have emphasized. And finally, you have to set up a metrics for you to be able to measure to see if these things were actually working. So an example is having your velocity chat checked, because previously probably an actual ticket waits on maybe a QA ready for QA column or swim lane on your Jira board, and the QA personnel is actually striving to see how they can uh, um, get an update from the team. Okay, so if there is no communication as to a platform where they can actually say, "Hey, I'm done with my coding. I need you. I've deployed it into the test environment. I need you to go there, pick it up." It's going to waste its time on that swim lane. So if we have good communication depth, that means that the time that is being spent for a ticket to wait for the QA to pick it, as to the time that the actual developer had already dropped the ticket for the QA to pick it up, that will be eliminated because there's going to be lesser time. So definitely you're going to see improvement in your velocity. The same thing with your burn down chat. You might have less technical depths on your hand and all of those. So once you have those, you can document the steps so that if we have any onboarding of new resources, they can go through those documentation and they can see how the strategies, processes, channels, and everything that you've put in place for communication. Thank you, Sinan.
Thank you, Vina, for that. Okay. Okay, let's move on. So during a project, you observe that the team's burn down chart shows many tasks that are completed towards the end of the sprints. So how would you address this issue with work distribution? Kushal, you want to take?
Yeah, I can. Okay, so I mean, this is a very common problem, Sunat. If you see, most of the time when we circulate this sprint closure report at that point of time, if at all we are sharing those burn down chart, they are not linear. Ideally, there should be linear progression for them. But it's like they will go straight, and at the end they will, bend down. So, but it's like it's very common problem, and this has been raised mostly by the stakeholders. They want to see how exactly the team is working, and that too specifically when you are working in an environment where everything is being monitored, and it's more of an time and management projects. This is being monitored very closely. So I mean, just to mitigate this problem, what you can do, I mean, that would be my suggestion. We can just use there is a solution in Jira. I mean, I'm not aware of the other tools, but in Jira there is something called card layout. So color card layout. Within that, you can just configure it in a way that you can put issue, some JQL query. Sorry. So in JQL query, you can put something not status change for so many days, 5 days or 3 days or something. So whenever you are running a daily stand-up call, at that point of time, you will get to see that if at all something is being not changed for last 3 days, some status for a particular story, then it would be highlighted in red or whatever the colors that you can configure. That means that story is tailing out. It means that story needs to be actioned. So you can ask the developer, whoever is working on that story, that why story is not being done. If at all the story has some blockers, then ideally it should be placed under the blocker swim lane instead of uh, placing it or keeping it over there and not changing the status. So once the story turns out in red, then you can ask the developer, and in this way you can just avoid the situation where the developers are not burning effort on day-to-day basis. What they do generally, whatever the stories they are being assigned to them, they just on a very last day of the sprint, before the sprint is supposed to close out, they just put all those stories into the done status, and then the problem rises. So just to avoid this problem, what you can do on a daily stand-up base, you can keep a check on all those things, which stories are in stale state or which stories are not in stale state. If at all it turns out red, you can ask them why it is there. And the other thing is, like, this is from a scrum master perspective. We might be doing overestimation, or we might be doing some wrong estimations of those stories. So we can just improve in that area. There might be possibility that we are uh, giving too much burden to the developers that they can't pull off. And yeah, this can be one of the reason. And maybe there might be possibility that a story is pending and it is being blocked, and it never being mitigated, and it never being actioned by a scrum master or whoever it is being dependent on. So that would be my approach to get rid of this thing.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Kushal, for that. Okay. Let's move on. So, two team members have different opinion on the refactoring of a legacy code module. So, one team member favors a quick fix, and the other asking for a complete redo of the code. So, how would you facilitate a kind of resolution over here, Kushal?
Yeah, that's a that generally happens with the product owner and a developer, because one product owner goes with a functional perspective, and your developer solution architects goes with the technical perspective. So that is pretty common. And this is something, as a scrum master, I need to respect both the opinions from either product owner or from developer. So I will definitely, and I want to listen them what exactly is their point, but that too on a one-to-one basis. So I will set different times with both of them. Okay, I'll discuss what all they think, that what is their priority and how this can be done. Then I will just look out the I will evaluate the technical aspects for those things. In terms of what current state is we are in, and how this change will impact, if at all it's a complete refactoring, how it will impact MVP. And then I will listen out both the parties, both the developer and PO, and then we'll come onto the common ground. Then there is other thing which I'll be trying to assess, that is risk associated. If at all we implement both the things, if we implement complete refactoring, and if we do a kind of technical debt, okay, where we are just quick fixing the things. So in that way, I will try to assess time, okay, how much time it will take, and then quality, what we're going to deliver. If at all it will taking, I mean, if we are trying to fix it immediately, then will it compromise quality in any way? Then I'll come up to a middle ground where I'll take a mutual consensus. I'll set up time with both of them, and then I'll give my opinion that, okay, I evaluated this thing and this is my opinion. And instead of refactoring it completely, we can do incremental refactoring, where we can just give some 10 or 20% bandwidth of the entire sprint going forward for the refactoring of the code. Instead of giving 100% towards sprint goal, we can just slowly, gradually improve in that area, so that it doesn't impact the sprint goal as well. It does not impact the project timelines and the whatever the increment we want to deliver. So this is something I will try to bring up in. And then once everything agrees upon, then I will take the blessings from the stakeholders on that this is something we are going to we are planning, and this is something we will be implementing. And then that would be an agreement. We'll be sending out a mail to them, and then we'll start on that approach.
Thank you, Kushal, for that. Okay. So let's move on to the next one. The next one is regarding the budget. So let's say in a project we have a fixed budget. So how would you ensure that the team estimate align with the financial constraint? Obina, you want to take this? I guess you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can. Yeah,
All
please.
right. Sorry about that. So, for a fixed budget, and we want to make sure that the estimation aligns with the budget. This is usually common when we have the team working as contractors with a client or for a client service. So the first stage is having a clear scope definition. Okay, we want everyone on the team to understand how the scope of the project is and what the business value is and how that aligns to the task that we've been assigned to do. The next step would be actual prioritization. So you guys said you have a fixed budget and there's a lot of things that you want to work with. I recommend using the Moscow technique, the must have, should have, could haves, and would have. That way we can actually highlight features that are a must, the product or the project cannot do without. Okay, that way we focus on those. We know very well that we're going to get our money at the end of the day if we fix those features or those issues. The second one, the could haves, are the ones that we can do with it. It has an impact, but not as high as of an impact as the must haves, and we can work on those next, and we trickle down to the last one. So that way, we have a happy customer, and we have a happy client. The next stage is going to have we call it the same estimation technique. We can use historical data. We can use uh, creating buffers so that we can fix in things. So now I'm going to talk about the buffer part. We have clients that are not 100% sure of what they have. They don't have all the features they want to work on ahead of time. So creating buffers just give windows for us to be able to take some of those requests in when we have the actual plan. We can the actual roadmap being built. We have spaces where we can accommodate those requests that are coming that we have on the go. So these can happen in all types of projects. The projects that are fixed, whereby we just have an MVP and we just want to enhance it, while there are projects whereby we're not really sure. We know what the end product is, but we're not sure how we're going to get there. Things might come up in between. It might be security enhancements. It might be which includes firewall enhancements. It might be network enhancement. All of those. So creating buffers would help so that we don't go beyond budget. Um, Also aligning the estimates with the budgets. This happens mostly with project managers that work closely with the either the sales department, because what they do is try to align it's like a cost breakdown. You're aligning the cost with the resources that you have and with the time, which is based on the estimation. So at this period of time, we're going to need this resource. I'll give you a very typical example. So let's say we're working with Infosys, and the client is Wells Fargo Bank. Wells Fargo needs to work on a firewall or SSO upgrade or whatever. Now they have a fixed budget and they want this to be done within this period of time. Infosys is going to say, we can give you based on your budget these two persons who are going to be who are experts, and based on their expertise you're going to finish it on this time. So you need to match their cost with resources and the estimation for you to have not to go beyond the time and not to go over budget. And I think the final stage, or before the final stage is monitoring the risk. Before the final stage, you need to monitor, have continuous monitoring. So what I recommend most of the time is to have dashboards with metrics everywhere that kind of keeps you at bay at what is happening. Okay, so you come on your dashboard, you see where we have probably bottlenecks, you see things that, especially people who use the Kanban board, you see work in progress that have been set with tickets that have stayed at a particular status for a long period of time. You have to monitor to make sure that you're on track. That way, you make sure that you don't go over, go beyond the set estimated time, and you don't go beyond budget because they work hand in hand. And finally, we go with the risk analysis. Okay, so you analyze the risk that might happen, because I'll say that should have been the first stage. If you don't plan for risks and mitigation plans for those risks that might happen, probably a failed API, you have to have plans for it. What happens if we have a failed API? Should we have a backup API? Should we use a technique that helps us save previous data that have been put by the API? You need to plan for all of these, just so that, like I said, you can still meet up with the estimated time and the budget. So risk analysis and having plans or mitigation plans to work with when these risks do occur is it's a must when aligning estimation with budget in any project. Thank you, Sinead.
Great, Obina, for that. Wonderful. Okay, let's move on. So the next question is that you notice that the team is not taking the ownership of their commitment during the sprint planning. So how would you coach them to improve their accountability? Obina, you want to take this?
I'll take this one too. I'll take this one. So commitment is something that is huge. Okay, it's one of the values of Agile. It's the impact of commitment is very high for you to get an actual end result or end shippable product. We need everyone to be committed, and that works. The reason I wanted to take it is works hand in hand with the estimation. Now we have a team that they're doing poorly with when it regards to estimation. One of the reasons might be that we have a team that works with demand and control, not demand and control, forgetting the phrase, command and control. Thank you. So, which we know very well that one of the reasons why we embark on an agile journey is so that we can have a team that is self-organized, self-managed, and we have to push that away from command and control. I've been in projects whereby the product owner or the business analyst they get the features, they break it down into user stories, and they assign the amount of hours or the story points that they feel is relevant. Probably they have uh, um, backed up data of similar user stories and all of those. Now, what this does is it continuously takes the commitment away from the developers. So the first step is I make sure that I involve them in the estimation, and I always go through the a planning poker. That way, everyone is heard, everyone votes. We all know how the planning poker works. No one sees the other person's estimation, and when we all flip a card, you can ask each person. Now, what this does is it encourages everyone to give an input as to the unforeseen circumstances, the risk, the block unforeseen risks, all of those. They're going to voice it out, techniques, and it kind of gives them a sense of commitment, a sense of involvement in the project because they're making the decisions. And the tickets or the user stories that they're working on, they actually have visualized it while they were carrying out the estimation, so they are already tied to it. So I also encourage a safe space and a safe transparent space. Now that works with that estimation technique where you make the team understand that um, whatever you say is there's no wrong. There's a way my product owner says this. There's no wrong or right answer. Whatever you think would be a hindrance to this project moving forward, please say it. Whatever blocker we're going to expect, please say it from whatever direction, experience, better way, best way we can do it. So I encourage that as well. Then I have something called an accountability mechanism, which we introduce during the daily stand-up. We make sure that the developers actually don't just come and they say, today I did this, tomorrow I'm going to do this, no blocker. They literally talk about that's what they did, and not just highlighting the ticket. They can give details of what they did in the ticket. So I've seen instances where someone says, today I worked on the front end and I changed the banner. Okay, they can go as well as saying, today I worked on the front end. They can go into the process that they walk through, and in as much as it's time box, they kind of give a little bit more detail than just what they worked on. That way they have that ownership of that actual feature or ticket or user story that they're working on. And finally, just to improve their morale, I encourage celebrating success. Whenever you find out that they're able to achieve something or they took care of a roadblock, you celebrate it. That actually always encourages them to commit to doing things. Okay, you don't just act like they should know that they should know that it's their role. They should do it. It's something that they should do. Your any opportunity you have. If you don't have much of an opportunity, your retrospective. Take out time, celebrate the wins of everyone who went above and beyond to take care of a huge blocker. Whatever it is, celebrate them. You're going to boost their morale and you're going to encourage them to take ownership and commitment to whatever they're working on. Thank you, Sunan.
Wonderful and great, Obina, for that. Okay, let's move on. So, during a sprint review, the stakeholder provides some unclear and the conflicting feedback on the product increment. So, how would you clarify their expectation for the upcoming or the future reviews? Uh, Kushal, you want to take this?
Yeah, Sumit. Okay. So, during sprint review, we get a feedback from, I mean, this is my way, as a Scrum Master, I always ask for the feedback. How do they feel? I mean, are we in line with the sprint goal or not? Did we achieve the sprint goal or not? So if at all, some product owner says that, okay, it is something, he gives some feedback and all those things. So I do capture them then and there itself, but I do not disturb the actual taste of demo. So I ask them to continue with the demo. Instead, what I'll do, I'll just capture their feedback and I'll not start my discussion in the demo itself. Once the demo is being done, I set up some time with those people, stakeholders and business, and then I ask what exactly they feel, what exactly we were missing on, and then I start working on that. So in a way, if at all that something is being said which is something not in line with the minimum viable product MVP, okay, so that core functionality is there. So if we are meeting the core functionality, and then again, if at all something is missing what they have not stated earlier, then I will just take a back step and I'll go to my previous sprint goals and everything, where I'll see, okay, if was it communicated to us what they are expecting. If at all that was not communicated to us and that they are expecting, then I'll collate those data and I'll have a discussion with them. And now if at all they want to see furthermore on top of that what we have demoed earlier to them, then I will explain them the scope trade-off or the timelines we do have. Okay, if we need to meet the project timelines, and which all those features what they are expecting can be implemented, and then I'll try to negotiate on those things, maybe using Moscow, like must have, should have, would have, or won't have. So if at all once they prioritize that these features they need to have it, then I'll take this with my developers and team and will ask them whether we can implement within this time frame, maybe in next couple of sprints or so. And if at all they agree and we are all in mutual consensus agree on that, okay, that these features can be implemented or can be presented to the stakeholders, then we just we just set up some discussion with the stakeholders and then we communicate it to them, and it's like a commitment from our end that we will be delivering this on so and so. And in the subsequent demo, I will take the feedback on the feature or the stories which we have worked in alignment with that feature which was suggested by stakeholders. And if at all everything goes fine, then it means that Scrum team is delivering everything perfectly.
Okay, great. Okay, let's move on to the next question. So the next question is, let's assume that your project is approaching its deadline, but the product owner is requesting some additional features. So how do you work with this scope creep situation? And you have to also ensure that your project delivery is on time and it has to be successful. So how we are going to manage all this, Kushal?
Uh, so for that thing, this is a very common problem. We have a change in requirement frequently, and at the last moment, your product owner will reach out to you and will say that, okay, I need this thing. I know, but the product owner never says that I don't need that thing. They always say that I need this thing, So at that point of time, we have limited bandwidth, we have limited resources. So I just do a kind of scope trade-off with him. What exactly you can deprioritize from the backlog. If at all something is there which is having lowest WSJF rank. So I mean, I do run my backlog grooming in a way where we assign some WSJF. Okay, and moreover, I will try to think on that. Whatever the stories or feature he want me to implement, so does it generate some value once it goes into the production? Does it have any high opportunity enablement factor or something? So if at all it do have all those things and it is being pushed by the stakeholders, higher audience, then definitely we will incorporate that. But for that, we do have, I do believe that we need to have a discussion with the development team or scrum team, just because we can't pile up anything on them straight away. So I'll have a discussion with the scrum team, and then we'll have a discussion whether we can do it or not, whether we can implement within that frame of time or not. And then if at all they agree, then whatever the effort, they will communicate to me on the basis of their effort in the WSJF. Okay, I will communicate it to my product owner, that saying that you can deprioritize something from the backlog with similar estimation. Okay, which he will deprioritize, and this whole process, it would be conducted by me, but the final say will be dependent on the product owner, which feature he want to deprioritize. And once he deprioritize that thing, then we will be starting working on that, because I can't push my developers to work day and night to complete that feature. So this is what I believe, this is what I'll be doing.
Okay, thank you, Kushal, for that. Just give me a minute. Okay, one of my old friend is calling me, but I'll call after this. Okay, okay, let's talk about the next question. So, during one of the project, a major dependency managed by an external vendor is delayed. So, how do you handle this kind of issues? These kind of dependencies and risk, and how are you going to manage your project plan, Abina?
Okay, so external vendors. This is something that we don't smile about because it's a really big issue. There's so many. You can, as a project manager, you can only plan your team. When it comes to an external vendor, there's so much risk involved. But now we're faced with an issue whereby um, they've come up with a delay, which is a big issue. The first step is carrying out an impact analysis. I love carrying out impact analysis because it tells you what can be um, affected. So yes, it's a reactive mechanism in project management, but we need to know what that delay would affect. If it's going to affect the deliverables, definitely it's going to affect the timeline. So if you have roadmaps already built, timelines, document processes, you have to revisit all of them. We want to know the teams that is going to be affected by that delay. So if it's definitely an IT project, if it has to do with an SSO, is it going to affect the networking team? Is it going to affect the front end team, the back end team, the API team, whichever team is going to affect? So you can go back and actually assess the situation. Now, the next step would be engaging with the vendor. I'm not really a fan of this, but you have to do it because you need to ask a couple of questions. Either via email, phone call, depending on the access you have to the vendor. You need to have a conversation with them to understand when they think that this delay is going to be over. What is the level? I usually ask for level of criticality of that delay. So is this something that you don't have a solution to, or is it something that you have a solution to, or is it something you're waiting on a solution to or for at a particular time? I need to ask all those questions. Now, I also ask for a revised timeline, which if you have the solution, definitely tell me when the earliest time and the latest time. I need to know when we're going to be having it. Then after I get those information, I tie it back to my plan. So remember, we already have a plan that has been made. This is usually done in a waterfall framework. I go back to the initial plan. I start revising timelines. I revise the actual scope and see how we can work around that delay. Um, Definitely, we have to reprioritize our tasks because with the help of the entire team, we go back to the design table and see how we can skip that particular feature or product or whatever is being delayed or task, and how we can do things and skip it. Now, after that, I also go back and I reassess the project schedule. Okay, go back. You have a new roadmap being built. Then I also come back to it's like working with a mitigation plan if you have a risk plan, but in this case, it's going to be a contingency plan. Okay, so contingency plan might be identifying other vendors because if depending on the communication we had initially, if they come with a scenario where they are not sure of what when the delay is going to be over, and your product is like a critical product. Let's say you have um, a payment channel that is your product is dependent on. Let's say PayPal, for example. Let's use that as an example, and that's not working well. You have to figure out a contingency plan because you're going to lose customers. Let's say you have a product that you have 100,000 customer coming to your page and they're shopping just like Amazon, and your payment window is being messed up by a third party vendor. You have to have contingency plan. So look for another vendor, find a temporary workaround, whether we can pay with other cards or other payment windows. So that's the example. Now, you have to monitor and report. So monitoring and reporting is a step I always want to take because you're going to use it for continuous improvement and not just continuous improvement. You're going to use it as a reference for planning for future projects. So you monitor how that delay is affecting your project through your dashboard, your metrics that you've set, and also you report all of those. The final stage will be communicating with your stakeholders. You need to make them understand the impact of that delay. You need to show them those contingency plan that you've put in place. You need to also show them the new timeline, and you get your feedback from them and you work around. So once you put these pillars in place, I think you should be able to make your way around the delay that may cost you your job. Let me use that phrase. But I think that would be my approach. Thank you, Sinan.
Wonderful, Obina. And I think with this, we come to closure of our session. We have covered all the questions which we are going to discuss for this session. So with this, yeah, thank friends for joining us today. And we hope that you found this session helpful and informative. And if you enjoyed this session, please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. And we hope to see you in our next session. Until then, take care. This is Sunan Sharma signing off. And thank you, Bina and Kushal, one more time. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Anand.
Yeah.